I'd also like to start just by acknowledging that this is Treaty Week, and where I am in Hamilton Centre, Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas nations. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. And we further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase of 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit of the First Nation. And as it relates to this discussion on housing, and particularly having this discussion on housing during Treaty Week, we have to recognize that the ongoing impact of colonialism and land dispossession continues to disproportionately impact First Nations communities across Ontario. And we need to keep that centered in our work when we think about reconciliation in housing policy. We won't be focusing exclusively on that today. We'll be focusing very narrowly on Bill 60 and the impacts, particularly on tenants, but we will keep that in mind as we move forward with this work. So again, the focus of this bill is really on how it's going to impact people who are renting their homes, tenants all across Ontario. We know, and particularly in Hamilton, in the riding where I'm in, many people right now are struggling to be able to keep their homes as it is because of, the shortage of affordable housing, because of escalating rent, and because of a lot of the loopholes that exist in our housing policy that allow particularly corporate landlords to continually increase rent prices to the point where it's not uncommon we have people spending 70 or 80% of their income or more on rent, which we know is not feasible. So it's an incredibly important conversation to be having at all times, but especially at this time when we know that there's so many people struggling with affordability. We really need to do everything we can to preserve their ability to have safe and dignified housing. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is MPP Catherine McKenney. MPP McKenney is the official opposition's shadow minister for housing. Catherine brings deep knowledge of both municipal issues from a long and successful history as a city councillor in Ottawa, and also a lifelong passion for equity, sustainability, and community-led housing solutions. As I said, Catherine is a former Ottawa City Councillor and co-founder of City Shapes, and has spent years championing for affordable housing, transit, green space, and accessible city design. So take it away, Kat, to introduce us to, what is Bill 60, what's it all about, and why is it coming from the government at this time?
Thank you, Robin. And I just want to say I am absolutely honored to be in a space, in a meeting that is predominantly focused and brings in people from Hamilton. As we think about our province and what we need across this province, places like Hamilton, Oshawa, Windsor, I always think of as kind of that beating heart of our country. So I really am honored to be here this evening and speaking with all of you. So Bill 60, it's hard to believe that it was only a week ago tomorrow that Doug Ford and his Attorney General and his housing minister dropped this on us. I was actually in my car. Many people don't believe I own a car, but I actually do own a car. I was here in Toronto with a car because I had to bring a few things to my apartment, and I was driving home. So I jumped in my car, and my first stop was just outside of Port Hope, and I was shocked when I went onto my phone and it had blown up. I have never, ever received the number of messages and emails and phone calls from people both who were afraid of what was happening and those who were shocked at what was going to happen with people in our province who are renters. And it's kudos to you, all of you, and others who really put some of the brake, at least, pumped the brake on what was happening with Bill 60. And we know that with the proposed changes in Bill 60 to both the landlord and tenant board, and the for now retreated threat to consult on ending security of tenure, this bill creates, even today, what I think of as an express lane to homelessness, and effectively could end rent control. And to just put it into context, today, over 80,000 people are currently homeless in Ontario, and that is equivalent to the population of Peterborough. Think about that. All of Peterborough today is without housing. What would we do if that had happened in this province, where Peterborough, for some reason, had everybody in Peterborough had lost their housing? We certainly wouldn't take away more of their rights. I'll just say that. And this number is projected to reach 300,000 in 10 years, according to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So our local, councillors and mayors tell us it will reach 300,000 in a decade without serious intervention, and not this type of intervention to shift away from the direction that we're on. And today there is not one city in all of Ontario where a minimum wage worker could afford a one-bedroom home. Not one, let alone a two-bedroom if they happen to be a single mom who is, as we know, the most likely type of household in housing need. We also, in Ontario, have the highest rate of core housing need. And core housing need is defined as it determines if a household can afford suitable and adequate housing. So can they afford their housing? Do they pay too much for their housing? So they're at risk of losing their housing. And we have the highest rate of core housing need in this province. And in 2018, 29% of renters today in Ontario are in core housing need, and that compares to 19% in 2018 when this government took power. So 19% is still far too high, but it is increasing under this government. So if we think about the premise behind Bill 60, it is absolutely false. There is absolutely no data that supports the claim that tenant protections, that protecting tenants, cause the LTB delays, or that it discourages rental housing investment. Quite the opposite, really, because if we think about it, tenant protections have not increased under this government. They've actually weakened with things like the 2018 loophole, where there is no rent control, and yet we still continue to fall further and further into low housing starts, unaffordability. So I think it's really important for us to all remember that the LTB dysfunction is this government's fault. They actually inherited a functioning LTB. And the 2023 Ombudsman report, which I will put a link in to the chat later, but it confirmed that all of the dysfunction emerged after Ford took government. So it's not, and certainly COVID, what happened around COVID accelerated some of that, but it started almost immediately. So what we're talking about tonight, and what we want to really focus on, the changes to the landlord and tenant board. Things like notice periods for LTB hearings have been cut in half. They've gone from 14 to 7 days. So if you are behind on a rent payment, it means that your acceleration into homelessness, has been doubled, really. And appeal times have been cut from 30 to 15 days also. Tenants now have lost the ability to, with this bill, to raise issues at the LTB hearings. And often these issues are things like, issues like disrepair, harassment, and we know what happens. Like, we hear about it all the time. Illegal rent increases. So under Bill 60, you would not be able to raise these issues at the hearing. And landlords now will no longer be required to compensate tenants for personal use evictions. As long as they give 4 months now, there's no more requirement to pay that 1 month of rent. And this is happening, by the way, while the government, Ford, let's call it what it is, it's Ford, plans to hire more enforcement officers to help with removal. So this shift in the changes to landlord and tenant board are at the severe, work against tenants, to the real benefit of landlords, and they already have benefits. We wouldn't be where we are today if these large corporate landlords, and I think it's important to point out that most often what we're talking about is large corporate landlords. So real estate, investment trusts, these are large, almost faceless, heartless, corporate landlords that are, able to go to this government, appeal to them for these changes, and it is entirely profit driven. Now, I just want to go back a little bit to security of tenure, because again, it is what is really, in many ways, what is terrifying people, and myself included, because what it will mean essentially is the end of rent control in this province. The Attorney General last Thursday, commented about eliminating what he called evergreen month-to-month leases. And I think we know that it does reveal this government's intent to end security of tenure for tenants. It will keep people in constant fear. It will allow corporate landlords to adjust their tenancy, because this is what they said. They want to allow corporate landlords to adjust tenancy based on market conditions, without needing any rent evictions or dem evictions. So, when we talk about, ending above guideline increases, when we talk about ending rent evictions, it all seems a bit quaint today, given what this government is looking at. This would bypass the need for these investment trusts and these large corporate landlords to even pretend that they were fixing up their apartments, that they were renovating their apartments, or needing to demolish their apartment buildings. In the end, it would allow any landlord to evict any tenant, to charge higher rents. And we have to remember also, I think, that this would very much lead to discrimination. If you're in a unit today, you're a couple or you're a single person and you have children, perhaps your landlord doesn't want children in the building. They're able to evict you. It just opens up such discrimination in terms of tenants' rights. And it's also and they have retreated from this, but we have to we have to be vigilant. We have to ensure that we are working together, that we were standing up to say, we see what you want to do, and we are going to ensure that you hear from us, that you hear from us across this province. And it's really important, and I tell people this all the time, it's really important that we pull together. This is not just about an attack on tenants, low income tenants. This is an attack on all tenants across this province, whether you're a senior, whether you're a family, whether you're a student. This is something that across this province we all have to stand up together. So it also coincides, of course, with jobs crisis. It arrives at the same time that we have close to 800,000 people who are unemployed in this province, and really this government should be creating a plan to bring more jobs into our province and end homelessness, improve basic income, fund things like rent banks, make improvements to the landlord and tenant board, making evictions the absolute last resort. That's what a caring government, a government that cares about almost 40% of its residents would do. So we do have power. We are 40% of people in this province, and we do have power if we stand together and we push back. We saw that. We saw what happened last week over the weekend. They did retreat. I think they surprised themselves somewhat at what was coming at them, at their motive to strip all rights for renters. So I look forward to continuing this conversation. We know what works. We know what works. We know that it's public, not-for-profit housing. We know that it's building affordable housing. We know that it's restoring strong rent controls, closing loopholes, and legalizing things like fourplexes and that missing middle, gentle density, investing in supportive housing for people who today are chronically homeless. We know what the solutions are, and we have to continue to stand together and push for those solutions and not stand for anything less. So I will leave it at that and turn it back over to Robin.
Thanks so much for that, MPP McKenney. And there's so many good things there, and we're gonna make sure that we circle back when we summarize. But I want to make sure that Hamilton Acorn has a good amount of time to speak and share what's going on in terms of their local organizing. They are leaders, in Hamilton and then across Ontario. Of course, Acorn is always at the forefront of tenant-led movements. So I'm really, really delighted to welcome Marc Davignon to speak about the work that's being done at Hamilton Acorn and how we can all sort of support and mobilize around those efforts.
Thank you very much, Robin. My name again is Marc Davignon, and I am the co-chair of the Hamilton Downtown chapter of Acorn. Our esteemed Madam Chair, Amanda, is feeling poorly tonight. She sends her regrets, and she sends me in her stead. So I have some slides here. Where is share? There it is. So we're going to talk about Acorn, what Acorn has done, and what Acorn hopes to do, and what we can do together. Let's see here. Slideshow, there it is. All right. Okay, so for those who don't know us, Acorn is a national membership of tenant and community unions. We are more than 186,000 members in 30 neighborhoods, 30 neighborhood chapters across 6 provinces. Our strengths come from members, low and moderate income people organizing for fair housing, decent wages, and rights. Corporate accountability. We win not through lobbyists, but through people power, door knocking, petitions, and peaceful direct action. Acorn Canada is a multi-issue membership-based community and tenant union of low and moderate income people. We believe that social and economic justice can be achieved by building community power for change. Our members fight landlords and corporations through direct action. Our members also fight for new and improved laws to protect their rights. Each member has a vote, and only members speak for the organization and have the authority to set policy and determine the tactics of each group. We have a long and deep history of organizing in low and moderate income neighborhoods, fighting and winning through a variety of means, including door knocking, petitioning, local, regional, and national meetings. And last but not least, peaceful direct actions, all building power in the process. As I said, we have 186,000 plus members in 30 neighborhood chapters in 10 regions across 6 provinces. Like any union, our members pay dues so that they can have ownership and control over the direction of their organization. This makes us sustainable and independent from corporations, banks, and governments that fund most nonprofits. Since 2004, we have won several important victories, including payday lending legislation, raises in the minimum wage, housing rights bylaws across the country, affordable internet program, disability rights, and more. And we plan to win this fight against Ford's attack on tenants too. So we were at Queen's Park on October 23rd when Premier Doug Ford, Housing Minister Rob Flack, and Attorney General Doug Downey announced a new set of proposed changes to the LTB that would strip away key tenant protections, fast-track evictions, and open the door to ending rent control as we know it in Ontario. And it is good news that they have backtracked for now on fixed term leases. But there are other proposals in Bill 60 that would devastate renters, as we have discussed already. Specifically, there's the most pernicious of all, the fixed term leases. And we are happy that this has been, for the time being, removed from consideration for the bill. But for the time being is the key thing there. We would push for some sort of promise or perhaps, or hopefully even legislation that would make it so that this issue could never be raised again, because it is, the mere concept is devastating to renters here in this province and in other provinces that have suffered legislation like it. So he did backtrack on the fixed term leases, but that was only after a huge public outrage, which was led by Acorn and other tenant groups, such as ACTO, No Dem Evictions. The housing minister tweeted, "Now is not the time to explore these changes. The announcement came after 23,000 emails, I believe we're up over 25,000 now, were generated to the Ontario government through Acorn's online action. But as I said, now is not the time does not mean ever. This is likely just a first attempt, and we must be prepared to defend rent control against attacks in the future." So let's talk about some of the changes that Premier Ford wants to put into the LTB. He said that landlords are too fearful to enter the market, and changes will unlock tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of new units, and there is simply no data to support this. According to the CCPA, if you add up all the vacant units in Toronto, Hamilton, Ottawa, and Peel region, which are the four most populated areas in the province, at most, there may be 17,800 vacant units. However, why they are vacant is unknown. For example, Ottawa, where 42% are exempt from the vacant unit tax due to an unacceptable reason for being empty. Applying this percentage to 17,800 units leaves us only with approximately 7,500 units that would be unlocked, that would supposedly be unlocked by this. Furthermore, Ford has said that fewer rent controls equal more housing supply and lower rents, and this is simply not the case. Let's not forget that this was the same argument Doug Ford made in 2018 when he removed rent control on new apartments built after November 2018. So has the housing supply increased since 2018? No, it has not. Ontario housing starts are at an all-time low, and rents continue to skyrocket, especially in those newer buildings. Also in Ontario, 80,000 people were homeless in 2024, a 25% increase over 2022, according to AMO. Ford has said that evergreen leases that just go on and on with no end in sight may not be appropriate. However, these evergreen leases, that's code for security of tenure. It means that under his proposed system, under the current system, tenants cannot be evicted without a legal reason. Landlord wants to move in, landlord wants to do renovations, but let's be clear, because of Ontario's weak rent control laws, landlords are already able to evict good long-term tenants just for the purposes of jacking up rents. Many cities, because of ACORN and allies organizing, have brought in protections against rent evictions and other predatory landlord tactics. But these protections will be useless if landlords can just wait out the lease and evict people for no stated reason. Finally, there are more tenant turnover. Finally, he says that more tenant turnover leads to higher rents. For example, the CMHC found that in the GTA, units where tenants turned over were 31% more expensive than units where the tenant did not change. This is not about increasing housing supply. This is about bigger profits for Ford's landlord buddies. So let's look at some of the proposed changes to the LTB. They want to silence tenants in non-payment of rent cases. Tenants would no longer be able to raise new issues like disrepair that impact tenants' health and safety, landlord harassment, or repeated AGIs in non-payment cases of rent if they miss the strict LTB guidelines, which can be as short as a single day. But the majority of tenants are already at a big disadvantage. Deadlines are often missed because they don't have legal representation. They struggle to navigate a purposely complicated, confusing system of forms, or they face language or technology barriers, or they're juggling work, children, and caregiving responsibilities. This is also an attack on tenants who are organizing rent strikes. So making it harder to challenge N11s or redefining late payment for voluntary evictions. Ford's government wants to make it harder for tenants to challenge N11 agreements, forms tenants often sign while they are under pressure during rent evictions or landlord intimidation. These so-called voluntary evictions are often signed under duress when tenants are told they have no choice. And Ford's government is looking to define what counts as a late payment, opening the door for landlords to start eviction process if a tenant is even a single day late on rent. For people who are living paycheck to paycheck, that could mean eviction for being late by hours. They want to push less time to appeal unfair decisions. Right now, tenants have 30 days to ask for a review of an LTB order. Ford wants to cut that in half to 15 days. That's 15 days for people to find legal help, file paperwork, and prepare a defense before they could be locked out of their homes. This is not efficiency, it's erasing due process and putting tenants on the streets faster. He wants more enforcement officers to evict faster. Instead of investing in affordable housing or repairing broken LTB system, Ford wants to hire 8 or more new enforcement officers, government paid staff who would be working with sheriffs to remove people from their homes when they are evicted. He wants to push less compensation for evicted tenants. Under current rules, landlords evicting tenants for personal use, an N12, must pay 1 month's rent in compensation. Ford wants to remove that payment if the landlord gives 4 months' notice. In today's brutal housing markets, where rents are thousands of dollars higher than they were just a few years ago, this is heartless and cruel. Tenants need more relief, not less. He wants to cut tenants' notice periods in half. Tenants currently have 14 days to pay their rent before the landlord can apply for an LTB eviction for non-payment. Ford wants to cut that down to 7 days. This change would push countless tenants over the edge. He wants new restrictions on postponing evictions. Tenants would have fewer options to postpone or delay an eviction order, even in emergencies. This means our most vulnerable neighbors, including families, seniors, and people with disabilities, would be forced out before finding a new place to live. So, what did we do? We went to Queen's Park on October 23rd. We had an emergency Ontario-wide Zoom call on October 28th. And then on the 31st, on Halloween, we had Acorn members in 6 cities across Ontario: Toronto, Ottawa, Mississauga, London, Kitchener, and right here in Hamilton on Halloween. Here in Hamilton, we gathered outside MPP Monica Cirillo's office, and the energy was incredible. People who've lived through rent hikes, rent evictions, and years of neglect spoke out, many for the first time. And that collective voice is what matters. It's what forced the government to backtrack on its plan to eliminate rent control through fixed term leases. If we want to continue pressure on the Bill 60 issue, we would advise everyone to take the time to call and text Doug Ford's office, Rob Flack, the housing minister's office, and Doug Downey, the Attorney General's office. And here we have a sample message, but of course, people are free to say whatever they like on the topic. So in closing, Bill 60 isn't inevitable. Fixed term lease plan was already stopped because people organized and refused to be silent. We can stop the rest of the bill in the same way. Ontario doesn't need faster evictions, it needs stronger communities and affordable homes. So everyone who is here tonight, I want to thank you all for standing with renters. Let's keep building the movement, keep showing up, and make sure Doug Ford hears one message loud and clear. Hands off rent control, stop Bill 60, and start investing in housing people can actually afford. Thank you. If anyone wants to get in touch with Acorn, they can call us at the number provided. They can email us at hamilton@acorncanada.org. Our next downtown meeting is December 2nd at the Beasley Community Center, or you can just look us up on acorncanada.org.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I'm going to jump into questions. Thank you to all of our presenters, and thank you to those who've already put questions in the chat. I'm going to start with one question, which I think many of the speakers have touched on, but sort of what can we be doing right now to organize in a way and to mobilize so that, this bill, gets halted, hopefully, but also so if they try to bring back fixed term leases moving forward, which we know they're going to do, how can we organize quickly? So maybe I'll start with Kat, if you want to lead us off on that question for some of the actions that we can take right now on a provincial level.
Yes, absolutely. So as we've learned, this bill is moving quickly. They have moved it through time allocation, which means it doesn't go to committee. However, I would again emphasize that the broader the advocacy against this bill, the better. Bring people into whatever you're doing. We need to stop this. This is about people's housing, so bring in seniors group, bring in mental health and health groups, bring in, faith groups. Like, reach out into your community and ensure that there are a lot of people who perhaps this government won't expect to hear from on this, and bring them in and make sure that we are working together. This is a time, if there ever was one, where we need to work together. We need to ensure that imperfect allies are still our allies. We want people to stay housed, and we want to ensure that we give this government the message that there are many, many people watching what they're doing. So reach out. We've done some work with MPP Gilmore, who has brought in faith groups. There are other groups that are as concerned about housing and homelessness and its effect on health, mental health, and we just have to gather together. It is not the time to be aiming inside of our tent. It is the time to be aiming at this Ford government and to ensure that they are hearing from all of us. So call your parents, call your kids, call your friends, call anyone that you know, and make sure that they are joining any group and they are sending that message to the Premier.
Thank you so much, MPP McKenney. And I'd like to recognize, so we have one of our Hamilton City councillors in the audience tonight, Councillor Cameron Crutch. I don't know, Councillor, would you like to add anything as well?
Yeah, I'd be happy to say a few things. I think one of the myths around what happens in these spaces is that renters are alone. When I knock on doors, the number one thing I hear from renters is that they're afraid that they're not going to have their apartment anymore. They've been impacted by the rent control provisions Doug put in place in 2018. And look I'll say it, this guy's not okay. He's not okay. And he's been taking money from landlords for a really long time, and that's whose back he's got. But I want to share a couple pieces of information with you that I think will hopefully help. In downtown Hamilton, almost 80% of the people who live here rent their homes. Let that sink in for a second, right? That's the kind of solidarity you have at your doorstep. And across the whole of Hamilton Center and even beyond, from Dundas right the way to the Red Hill Valley Parkway, 55% of the people who live in that area rent their homes. And for a long time as renters, and by the way, I'm a renter, so hi fellow renters, we've been told for a long time, right, that we're the minority, we're less important, we don't matter. It's because the province has set this entire thing up to protect people who own property. But in so many spaces that we're in together, we are the majority. We're the ones who can control the narrative. And there are so many of you who can, I think, reach out and provide your input here. So like Kat said, solidarity is the answer, I think. And Hamilton is known for being a place where solidarity was born. We have a strong tradition of showing up for one another. And I think we have to do that now. So just want to leave you with that message that we have so many renters in our city, so many people who will be impacted by these terrible, terrible decisions. And again, always people over profits. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That is such an important message. And like you said, there are huge numbers in the tenant movement. It's just about bringing people together and mobilizing them. There was another question earlier on about, what can the Ontario NDP do to promote cooperative housing, and that's not something that we're seeing from this current government. I can just briefly speak to, and we can link in the chat. So part of our Ontario NDP housing proposal is the creation of Homes Ontario, which would be a public agency that would try to promote at least 250,000 units of new affordable housing, which would include a range of options from, non-market homes, including nonprofit and co-op as well. We really see that we need to get the provincial government back in the business of actually building truly deeply affordable housing, and making sure that housing is operated by nonprofit and non-market corporations or non-market companies as well, to ensure that housing stays deeply affordable and that we don't see a perpetuation of the housing crisis. There's more information about Homes Ontario that's just gone into the chat as well. If there are any last questions, if anyone wants to raise a hand, now would be a great time. Or I think I have another one in the okay, I'll go to Mary Kelly. I've seen your hand up a couple of times. Sorry, I haven't gotten to you just yet.
Hello, everyone. Two questions I have. I'm hoping that Catherine or Ricardo or Mark or someone else can answer. I'm staring right now at the bill. Bill 60, Fighting Delays, Building Faster Act 2025, Legislative Assembly of Ontario. So can you please clarify what it means? It says current status, second reading debated. So I'm presuming that's not a good thing. And the other thing is that elsewhere in terms of information that was provided either through ACORN in the previous October 28, whatever, provided a link to the bill, but also the fact that public consultations, meaning you have to consult, you have to go online, you can consult, you can provide your opinion up until I believe it's November 22nd. So Catherine and or whomever could respond to those two issues, because this is right on top of us. So what does that mean? Is this bill going to be passed before the end of the month? Thank you very much.
Kat, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can. This government has demonstrated, certainly in this term, that they are fast tracking a lot of their legislation, and this one was time allocated. So what that means is because they have a majority, they can essentially push it through without it going to committee, which really is it's hard to imagine a government not wanting to hear from the public on how they can make any bill better, but that is what has happened. So tomorrow we will continue to argue against that time allocation. They will likely, well, they will win it because they have a majority. We will, the final vote will be held at the after next week. So next week is what we call a constituency week. So the House doesn't sit, so it will come back November 17th. So there is a bit of time still to impress upon this government that that the changes we're looking at to the LTB should not proceed as as laid out in Bill 60. But I think when we think about the larger picture and security of tenancy, allowing people to stay in their units, as a long-term evergreen contract, that is what we will have to do after this bill likely passes without much change. So it is difficult. It's difficult to be part of a movement that we know we're up against a majority government, but because of what you've done, we have seen them retreat from like the most egregious parts of what they were looking to do. So I really do encourage everyone. I'm doing it in Ottawa. We're doing it across this province. We're doing it in the north. We really have to continue to push back. But yes, the final vote will likely be early when we come back the week of November 17th.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. If everyone's okay to stay a couple minutes longer, I'll do one more question from Riley, and then we'll sum up and talk about some next action steps.
Hello, my name's Riley. I'm calling from Sault Ste. Marie. I got rent-evicted in 2017, and I went through emergency housing, and they offered me a place in 2024. So that was a 7-year wait. How would you guys increase access to emergency housing for people that do get rent-evicted or other kind of no fault of their own removal of tenancy.
I saw Kat raise their hand. Kat, go ahead.
Thanks for that question, Riley. And I am sorry that happened. As MPP Lennox mentioned, I was a city councillor in the city of Ottawa. I actually worked at the city of Ottawa. I had a senior role at the city for many years, so I am very familiar with the wait list on for housing. What we need short term. Certainly, we need short term solutions. So we need housing benefits to keep people in their homes. We need good, strong rent control to keep people in their homes today. And at the same time, we need to move towards ending homelessness. And that includes building, nonprofit cooperative housing that gives you the option. I myself have lived in cooperative housing. I've lived in community housing. It gave me an option at different times in my life to be able to pivot, to be able to go into housing that was available to me. We need to get back. We need to get back to building that housing. But again, that is long term. That's a bit on the horizon, but we have to start today. But we can today stop people like you from falling into homelessness. If you lose your job, if you get ill, if you are rent evicted, how do we ensure that people don't continue to lose their housing? So it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both, but we absolutely need to push for a government that believes in nonprofit housing and building that type of housing that will keep people housed.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to everyone who participated in the discussion in the chat as well. Just to sum up where we're at, so like we said, there are lots of really bad components that still exist in Bill 60. They did walk back their initial, question about the security of tenancy, but they totally tipped their hand. Right? That this is who they're working with. They're working with the landlord lobby. They're coming after rent control. They're coming after fixed terms leases. And while the Minister of Housing said, we get that it's not the right time, well, there's no right time to be able to make those changes. And that's the message that we need to carry forward is, how, now that we know what's coming, how do we organize in advance, not just about the current bill that's in front of us, but the legislation that we know they're going to try to pass subsequently. We know that this government does not care about renters and they don't grasp the struggle that people are experiencing right now. We know that when it comes to jobs, like Kat said, there's a jobs disaster happening and they don't get it. They think people just need to try harder to look for work. We know there's a housing crisis and they don't get it. They think that by somehow making it easier to evict people, we're going to make more housing units available. So, we need to do as much organizing as we can so that people in the general public, including tenants and including allies of tenants, are aware of what's happening. Because what we're seeing right now with this government is that they are trying to push forward so much legislation in short sittings that you almost can't keep track because it's just one thing after the next. And so we need to do what we can in our own social networks to make sure that people are aware of what's happening, particularly people who are going to be affected. Because when we have people working 2 jobs to afford their 1-bedroom apartment, they don't have a lot of time to read the news, right? And so reach out to the people who are struggling right now, who would be deeply affected by this so that they know and they have an opportunity to raise their voice, talk to their networks, and connect with people. And we need to start hitting this government where they're vulnerable. Because every time we as the official opposition try to raise our concerns about where they're headed with things, they say, well, we were given a majority government. We have the people of Ontario on our side. And so if you live in a riding where there is a current government conservative MPP, message them to let them know that you're not happy with this, that this is not the representation that you were looking for. If you're someone who writes well, write an op-ed, try to publish it in, a local paper where there's quite a good conservative following. If you have friends or families or neighbors who vote conservative, talk to them, make sure that they know, what their vote is being used as a blank check for. These are the ways that we can try to mobilize people, because until this government feels vulnerable, feels like they're actually getting significant backlash for the decisions and the policies that they're proposing, they're not going to change course. They're going to keep ramming things through. So the louder we can get and the louder their communities get, the more they're going to take notice, because ultimately they're working in their own self-interest. So that is what I would say is something to take away from this. There are lots of things that we can do. So, be a source of information in your own community, in your own building. Knock on the doors of your neighbors, let them know what's going on. Bring a petition with you so that we can, show that we have thousands and thousands of signatures of people who are against this. We have the online opportunity with the ERO where you can actually submit feedback directly to the government by registering as well. That's open until November 22nd, but would do it as soon as possible because this could pass fairly quickly. Those are the things that I would suggest if you're great on social media, if you make videos, lean into whatever your special skills and talents are and try to contribute them to the movement because it really is going to be everyone together joining forces, bringing together that energy, and then figuring out how to move forward. We will make sure that this recording is available to everybody. Please reach out to my office email address if you'd like any questions answered that we weren't able to get to, and we can make sure that we have input from the other speakers as well for those answers. And most of all, just please, don't be discouraged. There's lots and lots of opportunity here, not just on this bill, but on the next bill. So please keep up that energy and thank you so much for taking the time to attend. I know life is incredibly consuming and busy for everybody, so just showing up today is really wonderful. So thank you so much. Great. And thank you to our wonderful speakers, every single one of you for making the time today. All right.